Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Harebrained Games. We're doing a special segment today, born of some questions that some of my local experts and coworkers and awesome people around me have asked. And that question is, what are some of the best two-player games that are available? And I think that's an excellent question because this is the time and season with COVID still hitting around in different places and constraints still being what they are, that I decided to go ahead and not only answer their question, but as usual, commit clear overkill in providing this information to anybody and everybody on my YouTube channel. Now, a couple caveats. These are going to be top 5 two-player games in 2021 that are available. I limited myself to that because there are a lot of great two-player games in the past that I don't think anyone needs to pay $200, $300 for on the secondary market. It would be a fruitless recommendation. And the other thing is priority is given to two-player only games. If at all possible there was a great game that was two-player only, I gave it precedence over games that play 2 to 4 players and have a great two-player component but are also for others. Also, priority was given to competitive rather than cooperative. This allowed me to bring my wife in for some of these things. My wife is very much of the mind that if she can't beat me at something, it's not a game, it's just a puzzle. And so you won't see any cooperative recommendations here. I have plenty of those, and I could do that in a different list. I'm not going to right now. So the other thing is I think people will learn is that once you ask me a question about games, I never shut up. So I'm going to shut up right now and get to the top 5 casual to semi-casual games for 2 players, top 5 avid gamers games for 2 players, and then the top core, like hardcore gamers games for 2 gamers. Let's get to it. Okay, 4 top 5 casual to semi-casual games for 2 players. I'm going to give honorable mention to one of my favorite two-player games that I played hundreds of games of, Lord of the Rings Confrontation. This is a Stratego variant that really imbues Lord of the Rings features and lore into it in a way that's a 20 to 30 minute game that is still one of my top favorites. However, it's $229 on the market, so that's out. But if you ever do find it, I think it's a gem. Let's get to number 5, Splendor. My wife and I love Splendor. Splendor is a very simple engine building game, and by that I mean you have cards you play and tokens you grab. You pay for cards. Cards give you other benefits. It just builds and builds and builds until you earn these points, and you earn 15 points. Whoever gets their first wins. Very, very simple. So it's really simple. I have played many, many games of it. My wife has probably played 300 or 400 games of it, digitally and in real life. Real life, yeah, that's where we're both human and together. And so there's that. There's also a Marvel edition if you don't like the sparklies as much as you like the gauntlet power things. Either way, Splendor is a good recommendation in my opinion for casual folks who want games that are nice and competitive but also a tad friendly. Excellent components too. Number 4, Dragon Castle. This is a take on Mahjong with a flair. In this, you start off with a centralized Mahjong tile set. In real life, you're pulling these off to build up your personal sort of towers, and you're going to score points based on how you build the towers and the configurations. It's really clever. And the fact that it's Mahjong, or people who have played Mahjong may find that it's a little easier to gravitate to that with this extra game. And it's, again, the artwork's great, the style's great, recommended. Number 3, Minecraft. Builders and biomes. This is also similar to Dragon Castle in that you have this sort of centralized set of blocks, and you're going to use that coupled with this sort of spatial puzzle, movement puzzle, in order to be able to fill out your personal building world with using these blocks to pay for certain buildings and whatever. And there's going to be 3 scoring rounds, and you're going to be sort of steering your scoring based on what the scoring criteria are that round. Surprisingly good licensed title. Very, very, majority of licensed games really stink. This one by no means does. This one does not, so recommend that. 2, Patchwork Express. To get away from the conflict, you would think that patchwork and quilting would not provide you with an opportunity for ire and angst and mutual disregard. This one does. Patchwork can be played kindly, but if you want to win, eventually someone's going to want to play less kindly. Patchwork is all about building your personal quilt and doing in such a way that makes it really difficult for your opponent to do the same. Right now, Patchwork Express is at a screaming good deal on Amazon, and I've played quite a few games of it, and I think that it's entertaining. I think people who like spatial puzzles are going to groove on that. Number 1.5 is going to be a game called Clask. Now, Clask is very different from the rest of these because it is effectively magnet hockey, magnet air hockey. And you will play it. I have yet to find someone who doesn't like to play this game. Basically, you have your magnet under the table, you have your little hockey puck, and you're trying to get it into your opponent's goal. It's clever, it's brilliant, it's simple as heck. You could probably build one, do it yourself. But man, does that one resonate, and it's great to pull out and start off with a few games of that, and then go on to other fare. Like I said, it's definitely out of band compared to what usual two-player games there are. So recommend it. On we go. Number 1.25 is a newer game called My City. Now, if you played Carcassonne or you've played any spatial puzzle games like some of the ones aforementioned ones, My City is a legacy version of a tile building game. You have, again, your own personal play area, and you're going to be grabbing tile shapes and fitting them in such a way to achieve whatever the given objectives are. My City has 25 different missions, and you start off real simple, like just place the tiles. And as you place the tiles, you're going to get certain points for how you place the tiles. Pretty soon, you're going to open up more and more complicated objectives until you're actually playing a much more sophisticated game than you started with. And so My City right now is great. Once you're done there with the legacy part, there is a common part too, or you can continue to play afterwards with sort of a common map. So recommend that. And finally, the number one, and this time I mean it, the number one two-player game for casual players, without question or reservation, is Seven Wonders Duel. Now, for those who played Civilization or games like that in the past, this is going to be clever and you're going to like it. For people who don't, it's still approachable. The idea is you're building a pyramid of technologies and resources, and then you're going to build up your civilization using these ways. There's ways to win. You have a variety of ways to win, but ultimately you're building for 3 rounds of building sort of this pyramid of technologies that get more and more advanced. And there are a couple add-on packs too that help actually gamify it a little bit more. So if you like it, and generally most people do, you play it and then you like, hey, I need a little more, maybe a little more sophisticated or complicated versions, you can add to it or not. So anyway, that would be my top number 1 suggestion for two-player games for casual players in 2021 of games that are available. Okay, now let's get to the next set. Okay, now we're going to talk about top games, two-player games for avid gamers who have been around the block board game wise and have already played their set of games over the years and maybe want something a little more complex. There might be some bleed over. Some of these you might go, nah, that could have easily been in the easy group, but do your own 5s. All right, so number 5 is Dominion. Dominion is not a two-player only game, but it is my favorite two-player game. My wife and I have played around 350 games of this. Dominion is a card game. It is the sort of the card building, deck building game. Deck building is a genre that means you're building up your deck over time by grabbing and buying new cards and just making your card deck go bigger and do more. Dominion is fantastic, especially at two-player. The core box is plenty. You're always going to be able to choose different cards to start with, so you're going to get a pretty varied experience, and all these cards kind of have to work together in certain ways. The idea is to collect victory point cards, but those cards clog your deck, so the more victory point cards you have, the more likely it could be you'd have dud cards in your hand, and it's sort of an interesting catch-up mechanism. I'm glad they mustered the energy to add that. Anyway, Dominion is pretty easy to find. There's about 10 or 11 expansions, so if you get into it, you can really get into it, but the base game is just fine. Number 4 is a game that isn't as well known, but is one that is dear to my heart, and it is two-player specific, called BattleCon War of Indines. Now, if you love Street Fighter, or you remember playing Street Fighter, you're going to love War of Indines. It is the closest translation I've seen. You have a variety of characters, and each of the characters, fighters in this game, are individualized in a great degree. You will know from the cards you have and the special moves which character you're playing. Some of them are pretty simple. Do damage, do backflip, stay away from. Some of them get really, really intricate, teleportation and whatever. All of this playing out on a card game that's literally a back and forth Street Fighter style game. Highly recommended, still in stock and available. Lots and lots of add-ons, but definitely give that a shot if you think that's going to tickle your fancy. Now rolling back a little bit to maybe something slightly less complex is a series called Unmatched. Unmatched is also a two-player duel, mostly two-player duel, you can play more, but where you are taking a custom deck, a custom character, and there are many. There's Robin Hood, there's Cobble and Fog, there's, oh my gosh, the amount of different varieties, and it's cool because you're sort of pitting all these different genres and different styles of characters against each other in this sort of game system. So Unmatched might be something to try as well. It's simpler than BattleCon and might be a good first step towards it. Number 2 is Arena Roma 2. This is specifically a two-player game where you are taking part as you have one side, your opponent has the other side, and in between is a sort of a battlefield in the middle where you are placing cards down that you're paying for and then trying to activate them using dice. Activate them does all kinds of things like help destroy your enemies or help you build up or give you victory or coins or whatever. You've got characters that can assassinate. You've got buildings and machinations and such. It's a very strange game, and it's not very well known. It's not something you're going to be able to go find at Target, but it is something that as a two-player game, the back and forth nature of it, it's very clever, and it's called Arena Roma 2. There's an original Arena Roma, a little more difficult because there's no words to kind of describe what the cards do on the cards, and so it's a little harder for people to look up sheets and go, that icon means do that. Roma 2 takes care of that. And finally, the number one game for avid gamers for two players, in my mind, is a game called War Chest. War Chest is chess with clever pieces. War Chest is chess if your king had special moves and your queen had special moves and your bishop had special moves. And the idea being is you are taking, it's an area control game in the simplest way possible with very heavy, thick, awesome tokens that you place around the board. You have a large group of tokens to choose from, so every game can be slightly different. It is a bag building game, so you've got your tokens in your bag and you're blindly grabbing 3 out and you're going to play them. Some activate, sometimes they fuel other cards, sometimes you can double up like, king me, and then move them around and take over stuff. But archers and javeliniers and stuff, it's done so simply that once you learn it once or twice, you can play it again. And this one, again, it takes 20-30 minutes to play, and it still feels like you played an awesome fight. So that's it for that. Now we're going to get to the final category, and that category is the top concerted gamer / aka hardcore gamer games for two players in 2021 that are available. Okay, we're on the cusp of complexity greatness, aren't we? Alright, number 5, Doomtown Reloaded. This is the spaghetti western in a box, and it is for two players, and it is crazy. The rules are very tricky. There's some rules and phrasings that make it a lot harder to learn than it might first appear. Doomtown Reloaded is all about you're in Doomtown, and it's up to you to sort of position yourself and jockey yourself to win. This is not like Gunfight City. This is not Gunfight at the OK Corral where I slap my cowboys and they shoot you and you shoot back. Timing and posturing, location, everything is critical. If you want sort of the spaghetti western suspense kind of thing, this is your game. Number 4, Innovation. Innovation is one of the few games my wife will play that is pretty complicated to really understand. It too has terms splay, meld, and whatever. Innovation is all about basically a tech tree. It is a giant game about tech tree, and it is the biggest tech tree you're ever going to play. It's got hundreds of cards, each one with a different technology. These technologies will add to other technologies you have. They'll overtake other technologies and obsolete them. And each of the in different ranges of technology, and you're going to use these to go after your opponents. You're going to go after these to go after building up your own set of scoring because you want to score certain points. And there's iconography galore. It's crazy. And right now it's at its screaming deal. Again, it's not for everybody. It plays up to 4 players. I hate it 4 players. I hate it 3 players. I adore it 2 players. My wife and I have played this 100 times, according to my calculations. She's won 7 times. It infuriates her that she can't win more because she likes this game. I, on the other hand, clearly have won 93 games, which makes this, like, statistically the greatest game of all time in the universe. So, anyway, on to number 3. If you are complex and you like history, Imperial Struggle is the game. My favorite game of all time, just to let you know, is Twilight Struggle. I didn't include it on this list because it's off and on being available, and it's very, very much a kind of a niche thing. Imperial Struggle is also kind of a niche, but it is a multi-hour game involving French and British colonization, war, expansion, blah, blah, blah. It takes hours and hours, and it's adoring. I'm not going to belabor the point. If you're interested in it, hit the link. Otherwise, yeah, this is a many-hour game that I think is 2-player only, and yeah, covers the material quite well. Number 2, Star Wars Rebellion is Star Wars in a box. If you want the full Star Wars experience from 4, 5, and 6, you want Star Wars Rebellion. You play the Empire, you play the Rebellion. It is huge. It barely fits on my kitchen table. It's got big Death Stars and big units. It's all about everything you remember that you adored about Star Wars growing up in the 70s and 80s is what you're going to find here. It is a 5-hour game easily. Because it is thematic, and it is rich, and it is just awesome, but it's also not for someone who wants to sit down and go, we got 15 minutes before the tamales are done, what should we play? Probably not a good idea to suggest this one. And finally, the greatest game of all time, 2-player, almost. Twilight Struggle again is my first, but this one is War of the Ring. War of the Ring is, again, Lord of the Rings in a box. It is your job as one or the other side to thwart the other side. War of the Ring takes Lord of the Rings and gives it everything you possibly need for many multiple hours of choices and decisions, getting the ring to Mordor, fighting the forces all over the map. It is the quintessential game for Lord of the Rings aficionados. But again, it's a day-long affair. So anyway, that's it. I hope this was of benefit to some of you, or at least gave some of you ideas of available games that are 2-player only or 2-player accentuated in 2021. I hope this was useful to you. If not, then I hope you had a good nap. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time on Harebrained Games. We're doing a special segment today as born and free. I defy